Hey, buddy, hit that subscribe. Just a sec for you, but it means the world to me. When I first signed the papers for that lakefront cottage on the far edge of Vancouver Island, I wasn't thinking about business, family drama, or any of that noise people drag into your life. I wanted quiet, real quiet, the kind you can taste, the kind where the sun creeps over the water like it's clocking in for work, and you're the only witness. That cottage was supposed to be my reset button after 3 long years of learning how to live without my wife. I'd spent practically my whole damn life, 30-plus years, counting pills, stocking shelves, and helping folks in Victoria who needed meds, advice, or just someone who didn't mind listening. I traded all of that over time, skipped vacations, and holiday shifts for one small slice of peace on the inlet. And honestly, I felt like I finally won something. Even the drive up that first day felt different. The kind of winding road where the trees lean and like they're checking who you are. When I pulled into the gravel driveway, gravel popped under the tires like it was welcoming me home. The place was only about 50 feet from the water, close enough that the waves whispered against the shore. A big blue heron stood nearby like it was guarding the property. I swear that bird looked at me like, "Yo, you better take care of this place." Inside, the cottage was empty but clean, smelling like cedar and opportunity. One main room, a snug-as-hell bedroom, and a bathroom that honestly scared me more than it should have because the shower seemed like it would judge anyone over 60 trying to step in. I moved in slow, not because I had to, but because I wanted to enjoy every second of putting my life together again. My old armchair found its new home in the corner, with a morning light hit just right. Books I never had time for stacked neatly on shelves that practically begged for stories. Margaret's 3 favorite novels sat together like they were saving my seat. Fishing pole above the door. Tools hung up exactly how I liked them. I built myself a routine out there. Wake up at dawn, coffee in hand, watch the sun rise without anybody breathing down my neck. Some mornings a seal would pop up like it had gossip. One morning, a whole pod of orcas rolled by like they owned the place. When I finally called my sister, Carol, she cried a little just hearing how peaceful I sounded. She said I earned this place after everything I'd been through with Margaret's illness and those long years of work. I felt good, really good, for about 2 weeks. Then my nephew Marcus called. And let me tell you, this man has a voice that could talk a cactus into buying sunscreen. He works in sales and acts like every call is the star of some big multi-million-dollar pitch. He starts talking about how he checked out my place on Google Maps. That was my first red flag. Then he dropped a phrase that felt like someone threw a brick in my stomach. "Do you know what the rental potential is on that property?" Bro, I bought the place to live, not to turn it into a revolving door for strangers taking boomerang selfies on my deck. But Marcus kept pushing, dropping numbers like he was auditioning for Shark Tank. $5,000 a month peak season, passive income, renovations, ROI. All that fancy stuff people say when they're trying to sell you on something they already decided you should agree with. And then this man really said, "You can stay in the back room when there aren't guests. It'll work fine for you." My own cottage, the one I worked 37 years for. And he was telling me I could stay in the back room like a guest in my own damn house. I told him no. I thought that would be the end of it. But Marcus isn't the kind of guy who hears no. He hears try harder. And that's when the piece I paid for started slipping through my fingers. But what I didn't know then, Marcus had already moved past asking. He was already planning. And by the time I saw what he did next, my whole life at the cottage was about to get flipped upside down. After that first call with Marcus, I tried shaking it off. I told myself he was just being his usual slick-talking self, always looking for some opportunity. I figured he'd drop the idea once he realized I actually meant no. I wasn't interested in running a damn Airbnb, hosting strangers, or sharing my kitchen with people who'd leave sand on the floor and fingerprints on the fridge. This place was my peace. My one shot at finally breathing again. For a couple of weeks, things went back to normal. I woke up before the sun, brewed my coffee, walked out on the deck in my old slippers, and listened to the water slap gently against the rocks. The trees around the cottage swayed like they were nodding at me. And every morning, That heron showed up on the shoreline, like it was clocking in for its shift. It felt like the universe was finally giving me something back after taking so much. Then I got the second phone call. This time it wasn't Marcus. It was my sister, Carol, and she didn't sound like she was calling to check in or tell me she was proud. She sounded tight, stressed. I could hear the way she inhaled sharply, like she'd been rehearsing something she didn't know how to say. "Thomas," she said, "Marcus is very upset with how you spoke to him." Oh, for the love of... It hadn't even been a heated conversation. I just told the man I wasn't turning my home into a rental circus. "Carol," I said, keeping my voice steady, "he suggested I move into the back room of my own house. How is that reasonable?" She let out this long sigh, the kind mothers give when they're caught between protecting their child and admitting their child might be acting like a fool. "He's enthusiastic," she said. "You know how he gets when he gets an idea. He just wants to help." "Help me into homelessness?" I muttered. She didn't laugh. Instead, she said, "You've changed since moving out there. You sound harder." That one stung a bit. Because, yeah, life changes you. Losing a partner, retiring, moving to a quiet place where your only neighbor is a bird with attitude. It shifts things inside you. But that didn't mean I'd turned into some kind of villain. I let it go, told her I loved her, hung up the phone. But I wrote it down, every word. Old pharmacy habit. Document everything so nothing gets misremembered. Not because I thought I'd need it, just because it helped keep things straight. Little did I know those notes were about to become real damn important. 2 quiet weeks passed. I fixed a few loose boards on the deck, reorganized the shed, settled deeper into my routine. I'd almost convinced myself the whole Marcus situation was just a weird bump in the road. Then a car rolled into my driveway. No call, no text, no heads up. Marcus stepped out like he owned the place, and Vanessa, his girlfriend, slid out of the passenger seat, wearing sunglasses big enough to cover half her face. She looked around like she was inspecting a property she was thinking of flipping on HGTV. They walked up the steps, and before I could even say hello, Vanessa said, "It's smaller than I expected." Right. Because that's what you say when visiting your partner's elderly uncle at his home. Marcus was all smiles, though overly rehearsed, like he practiced it in the mirror. "Uncle Thomas." We were in the area. They lived 3 hours away. He walked right up onto my deck. Didn't wait for an invite. Didn't hesitate. Just barged in with a confidence only delusional people and politicians have. "We want to talk about something important," he said. The way he said it made every nerve in my back sit up straight. I let them in, mostly so Carol wouldn't have a heart attack imagining me turning them away with a shotgun like some mean grandpa. They sat at my kitchen table, as if they were about to give me a loan. Marcus whipped out his phone and opened a spreadsheet like this was a board meeting. He started listing numbers. 60 grand annual potential, 40 grand profit. Shared evenly. Professional cleaning, bookings, renovations, long-term projections. Vanessa added little comments, like she was his hype woman. And then she hit me with one of the most condescending things I've ever heard in my life. "Thomas, we're just thinking long-term. You're 64, living alone. What's your 5-year plan?" Ma'am, my 5-year plan was to drink coffee on my damn deck and not be bothered. Marcus leaned in, lowering his voice like he was giving me wisdom. "We're offering you security, Uncle Thomas. We'd handle everything. You just stay out of the way." That was it. I told them no. Firmly. My cottage wasn't available for rent, discussion, or investment. Marcus's whole vibe shifted. Smile gone. Eyes sharper. "You're being selfish," he said. "Mom told me you'd be difficult." That sentence right there, it cracked something inside me. I wasn't just annoyed anymore. I was alert. These two weren't brainstorming. They were planning. Together. And they expected me to fall in line. They left after throwing me one last line. "You might not get another offer this good." Yeah, thank God. When their car disappeared down the road, I called Carol. And her reaction? Let's just say the guilt-tripping Olympics would have given her a gold medal. She said Marcus was just trying to help. Said I was being dramatic. Suggested I move in with her while they rent my home during summer as a compromise. Nah, no way. Not happening. That night, I made a decision. I was done being polite, done trying to keep the peace, done pretending Marcus wasn't working an angle. From that moment on, I watched everything closer, locked everything tighter, and I started researching property rights like I was preparing for law school. But even with all that caution, I wasn't prepared for what I discovered in town a couple weeks later. Because when I walked into a coffee shop and saw a poster advertising my cottage for rent, with pictures Marcus had no business having, that's when I realized he wasn't just pushing anymore. He'd already crossed the line. A couple weeks after Marcus and Vanessa barged in with their PowerPoint energy and condescending smiles, I tried to get back into my rhythm. I figured the confrontation would cool them off, or at least buy me some breathing room. I underestimated just how far Marcus was willing to go when he decided something was his calling in life. One morning I drove into town for groceries, a little hardware and a coffee. Nothing heavy, just a normal errand day. The town was quiet like usual, the kind of place where 2 cars passing counts as a traffic jam. I walked past the coffee shop window, reached the door, and then froze. Because right there on the glass, taped up nice and neat, was a poster. A bright, glossy, professionally designed poster. And on that poster, my damn cottage. Not just any picture. A full shot of my deck, taken at an angle you can't get unless you're standing on the property. High res, too. And beneath it, in big friendly letters, stunning waterfront escape, Sanic Inlet Retreat, $300 per night. Book now. I actually said out loud, "You gotta be kidding me." Some teenager working the counter looked over with that expression kids get when an old guy starts talking to himself in public. I walked inside and asked the barista, "Hey, who put that poster up?" She shrugged like it didn't matter. Some dude paid me $20 to keep it up for a month. Did he say his name? Nope. Just asked if he could advertise a vacation rental. Of course he didn't give his name. Snakes don't introduce themselves. At the bottom of the poster was a website link. I typed in on my phone right there at the counter, and when it loaded, I felt my chest tighten. It wasn't some cheap scam page or ugly template. It was a fully built-out vacation rental website. Clean graphics, professional layout, soft watercolor tones. Like he paid someone who knew what they were doing. The title across the top, Sanic Inlet Retreat, your perfect getaway awaits. My cottage, my photos, my shoreline, my deck, my windows, my everything. All over this website like I had handed it to him personally. He even had the nerve to list amenities. Cozy with stove, private deck overlooking the inlet, local wildlife sightings, rustic cedar charm. He made my house sound like a damn spa retreat. Then I scrolled down to the availability calendar, and that's when the floor dropped out from under me. He already had bookings. 3 of them, all paid, all confirmed, all for dates he had no business offering. He wasn't trying to rent my cottage. He was already renting it. People had sent him money for a place he didn't own, didn't manage, didn't control, and didn't even have a key to. I felt my heartbeat in my ears. Not panic, rage. Pure. Clean rage I haven't felt since the day someone tried to cut ahead of Margaret in a pharmacy line while she was sick. I got in my truck and drove home slower than I wanted to. Every part of me wanted to floor it, but I forced myself to breathe, to think, because I knew if I didn't stay calm, I'd end up doing something I couldn't walk back from. The moment I got home, I checked every door, every window. No signs he'd broken in, no forced entry. But somebody took those interior shots, and there's only one time he'd been inside, without needing to ask. That we were in the area, visit wasn't spontaneous. He wasn't sightseeing. He was scouting. I sat down at my table, opened my laptop, and called Jennifer, my real estate agent from when I bought the place. She picked up like she remembered me. "Jennifer, I need a referral. I need a lawyer, a property law expert." She didn't even ask why. Maybe it was the tone in my voice. She gave me the name of a guy in Victoria, Richard Morrison. I drove to his office the next day with printed screenshots, a folder full of notes, and the website saved on my laptop. He looked through everything carefully, eyebrows climbing higher every minute. Finally, he said, "Mr. Cartwright, this isn't a misunderstanding. This is fraud." Hearing a lawyer, a calm, suit-wearing, paperwork-loving lawyer, say the word fraud out loud made everything feel real in a way that punched me in the gut. He laid out my options. Civil action. Sue him, hit him with damages, get an injunction. Criminal action. Report him for fraud over $5,000, which in Canada is a serious, life-altering offense. I asked how fast we could move. He said, "I can draft a cease and desist letter today. The injunction within a few days." "Do it," I told him. All of it. That afternoon, I bought a security system. 3 cameras, motion activated, cloud backup, installed by nightfall. The next evening, the cease and desist letter was delivered to Marcus's address. And right on schedule, at exactly 7 p.m., my phone rang. "Uncle Thomas," Marcus said, his voice sharp. "You sicked a lawyer on me?" "Over a business misunderstanding." Misunderstanding. That word practically made my twitch. "You listed my house without permission," I said. "You took people's money." "I was moving forward with our plan," he snapped. "I assumed you needed time to come around." Oh, so now ignoring a man's refusal is assumed consent, apparently. "You have 24 hours to take the site down and refund every penny," I told him, "or I file criminal charges." He went silent for a long second. Then he said the most entitled sentence I've ever heard. "You wouldn't do that to your own nephew." "Watch me." He hung up. I refreshed the website. It was still up. I called my lawyer. He didn't hesitate. We moved forward. The next night at 9:30 p.m., my phone buzzed with motion alert. On the security camera feed was Marcus, on my deck, trying the doors, checking the windows, hands in his pockets like he was deciding whether to commit a crime or walk away. He left after a few minutes. I didn't sleep much that night, not out of fear, but out of the realization that my nephew, my sister's only child, was spiraling into something dangerous. 3 days later, the police came. Constable Shu. Professional, calm. She took notes like she'd been trained by people who don't miss things. When she saw the website, her eyes went wide. "This is fraud," she said plainly. "If he shows up with guests, call me immediately." I didn't think he'd do something that bold. But the next evening, right at sunset, 2 cars pulled into my driveway. Marcus, and behind him, a couple in their 30s with suitcases. They were his first paying customers. He actually brought strangers to my home like he was a concierge. And when he started pounding on my door, demanding I check them in, that's when everything truly blew up, and the cops arrived to witness the whole damn mess. When the 2 cars rolled up my driveway that evening, the sun was dipping low enough that the water looked like it had strips of molten gold floating across it. Peaceful, calm, beautiful. Too damn beautiful for what was about to go down. Marcus hopped out of his car like some bargain bin real estate mogul. He had a clipboard in his hand. A clipboard. This man was treating my property like a front desk at a hotel he thought he owned. Behind him, the couple stepped out, early 30s, outdoors looking, smiling politely the way people do when they think they're about to start a vacation. I stayed inside. Lights off, phone in hand. Marcus marched up the deck stairs and knocked hard enough to rattle the glass. "Uncle Thomas," he called out. "Open up. Check-in time." Check-in time? Nah, no way. My jaw actually dropped. He knocked again, louder this time, like I was late for my shift at his imaginary resort. "Uncle Thomas. Seriously, we have guests waiting. Don't be rude." I could see the couple behind him through the window, whispering to each other like, is this normal? I could have opened the door and lit this man up with words I hadn't used since high school, but Constable Shu had been very clear. If he shows up with guests, do not confront him. Call me first. So that's exactly what I did. I backed away from the door and dialed her number. She answered on the second ring. "Mr. Cartwright?" "They're here," I whispered. "Right now." He brought customers. Her tone changed instantly. "I'm on my way. Stay inside. Do not engage. Meanwhile, outside, Marcus had gone from enthusiastic to annoyed. The couple's smiles were fading. The woman crossed her arms. The man looked around like he already regretted every decision that led him to this driveway. Marcus knocked again. Then again. Uncle Thomas. Stop playing games, he called out, his voice sharp. These people paid for this reservation. Paid. Yeah, paid him. I stood behind the curtain and watched. He kept turning back to the couple, making these big hand gestures like he was defending himself in court. Then I heard the woman say, loud enough for me to catch through the window, Wait, are you saying your uncle lives here? Like right now? She was confused. Rightfully. They thought they were renting a private waterfront retreat, not showing up to some family feud Airbnb nightmare. Marcus waved her off. He agreed to this weeks ago. He's just being difficult. That was when I almost tore the door open on pure principle. But the sound of tires on the gravel saved me from doing something stupid. Constable Shu's cruiser rolled up the driveway like a damn angel descending from heaven. She stepped out calm as ice, badge shining on the fading light. Marcus froze. The couple froze. Hell, even the heron on the shoreline probably froze. She walked straight past him and up to me. Mr. Cartwright? I'm here, I said, opening the door just enough to talk. Stay inside, she reminded me, then turned on her heel and went right back down the steps. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen a police officer professionally shut down someone's nonsense in real time, but let me tell you, it was beautiful. Like watching a surgeon operate. Clean, sharp, no wasted motion. She walked up to Marcus with a notepad. Sir, I need you to explain why you're attempting to check guests into a property you do not own. Marcus stammered. This is a misunderstanding. My uncle agreed. He did not, she cut in. We have documented statements and a formal complaint. The couple's eyes widened like they were in the season finale of some court show. Sir, she continued, these individuals paid you how much? The couple immediately answered, $2,400. Constable Shu wrote it down without blinking. That, she said, constitutes obtaining money by false pretenses. Marcus's face drained of color. He looked like he'd swallowed a flashlight. No, he stuttered. I was going to refund them. She held up a hand. Sir, stop talking. He did. She handed him a document, the civil injunction papers my lawyer had filed. Thick stack. Official. Serious. This is a court order, she said. You are to cease all rental activities immediately. Any further attempts will result in arrest. The couple didn't wait for more. They got in their car, so fast you'd think someone yelled, free iPhones. Their tires spit gravel as they backed out. Marcus stood there looking like a child caught stealing cookies. Except these cookies were $2,400 worth of fraud. He tried to argue, tried to spin it, tried to make excuses. Constable Shu didn't budge. Not an inch. Sir, you are under active investigation, she said. If you return to this property without lawful reason, that will be interpreted as harassment or attempted unlawful entry. He finally left. Just walked back to his car, pale, shaking, furious in that entitled way people get when the world refuses to bend for them. When his tail lights disappeared, Constable Shu came back to my door. He's been formally warned, she said. Everything tonight strengthens the case. I nodded slowly, but inside, I felt something heavy settle in my chest. Because even though the law was finally stepping in, I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And I knew, absolutely knew, that Carol was going to call. She always did. And this time, she wasn't calling to check in. Because when my phone rang later that night, and I saw my sister's name on the screen, I already knew this wasn't going to be a conversation. It was going to be a battlefield. After Constable Shu pulled out of the driveway, the silence that settled over the cottage felt heavier than anything I'd experienced since Margaret passed. The kind of silence where you can hear your own pulse. The kind where you know something big has shifted in your life, and it's not shifting back. I sat down at the kitchen table. though it's still warm from the evening sun, and I pour myself a small glass of scotch, something I barely touched unless life was being extra disrespectful. Tonight, it felt necessary. I stared out the inlet, watching the last light fade and the water turn into one big sheet of black glass. And right on cue, my phone buzzed. Carol, of course. I almost didn't answer. Almost. But guilt makes you stupid sometimes, and old habits die slow. I picked up. She didn't even say hello. Thomas, she snapped. Not my name. Not my brother. Not even a normal tone. No. This was the tone a mother uses when she is 5 seconds from throwing a shoe at someone. So this is what you've done? She demanded. You called the police on my son? I closed my eyes, counted to 3. Carol, he brought paying strangers to my doorstep. You humiliated him, she cut in. Do you understand how embarrassing this was for him? For us? Embarrassing. I repeated. He committed fraud, Carol. She scoffed. Actually scoffed at that word like I had insulted her cooking. He was just trying to start a business. He was trying to help you. He thought you needed support out there, living alone like what? I shot back. Like I'm incompetent? Like I can't live in my own home without supervision? She hesitated. That pause told me everything. Marcus said you agreed. She said weakly. Marcus lied. I replied, calm, firm, because there was no bending left in me. She didn't want to hear it. Not one bit. You could have handled this quietly, she insisted. You didn't need to drag the police into it. He dragged the police into it the minute he took money for something he doesn't own. I kept my voice steady, but inside I could feel the anger building like a slow boil. He ignored every boundary I set. He ignored a legal letter. He tried to force me into a corner. He's my son, she said, her voice tightening. My only child, and you've turned him into a criminal. No, I said. Marcus turned Marcus into a criminal. There was another pause, and then she pulled out the nuclear weapon. Margaret would be ashamed of you. It hit like a gut punch, not because I believed it, but because she intended to wound me with it. I took a breath, slow and deep, because if I didn't, I might have said something I couldn't take back. Do not, I said quietly, use my wife against me. Silence. Then she said, cold as ice. We're done, Thomas. Don't call me. Don't call Marcus. Don't reach out. She hung up, just like that. 30 seconds of grief shoved into my chest. I set the phone down gently. Not because I wasn't angry, but because I was so angry I was afraid I'd break it. I walked outside to the deck, scotch in hand. The night air bit at my skin. The water looked like ink. Somewhere down the shoreline, the heron probably slept tucked into its feathers, blissfully unaware that a whole branch of my family tree just snapped off. I stood there a long time, hours maybe, listening to nothing and replaying everything. I didn't cry. I didn't break. But I felt tired. So tired. Over the next week, the investigation moved fast. My lawyer, Morrison, called with updates. The injunction was upheld. The fraudulent bookings were documented. The couple who showed up filed their own complaint. And slowly, piece by piece, the case against Marcus grew like roots spreading underground. Quiet but unstoppable. Marcus stayed silent. No apology. No explanation. No attempt to fix the damage. Vanessa, though, she texted me. A long message. Mostly insults. Something about how I ruined their future and how I blew up Marcus's dreams. I deleted it without responding. Instead, I focused on rebuilding my routine. I chopped wood, repaired a loose deck railing, cleaned my gutters, anything that kept my hands busy and my brain quiet. Then, 2 weeks later, Morrison called again. Thomas, Crown Counsel has reviewed everything, he said. They're moving forward. Your nephew will be formally charged. My stomach tightened, not in regret, in finality. What happens next? I asked. He'll likely be offered a plea deal. Probation, restitution, a criminal record. No jail if he complies. I thanked him and hung up, and for the first time in months, I slept through the night, because it felt like the storm was finally passing. But storms don't always end when you think they do, because 3 days later, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. He's breaking down. You destroyed him. Hope you're happy. Vanessa. I deleted it too. The next week was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of calm that makes you suspicious. Until the Crown officially charged Marcus. That's when everything shifted, because the moment those charges hit, something unexpected happened. Carol showed up, not to yell, not to argue, not to defend Marcus. She showed up because life had slapped her with something she hadn't expected. Consequences. She parked in my driveway like she'd aged 10 years in a month. And when she walked toward my deck, her voice wasn't angry. It wasn't spiteful. It was small. "Thomas," she said, "can we talk?" And that's when I realized this story wasn't done. Not even close. Because the conversation that unfolded next didn't just reopen old wounds. It revealed something I never saw coming. Something Marcus had been hiding even from her, and it changed everything. When Carol stepped out her car and walked toward my deck, she didn't look like the woman who yelled at me over the phone, accusing me of ruining her son's life. She looked smaller, tired, like someone who'd been fighting a battle on multiple fronts and finally ran out of places to hide. I opened the door before she reached it. She paused, almost surprised I'd make her knock. "Come in," I said softly. She sat at the same kitchen table where Marcus once spread out his spreadsheet like he owned the world. Except now, she looked like she barely recognized the view. For a long time, she didn't talk. She just stared at the water through the window, fingers tightening around the mug of tea I'd set in front of her. The heron was out there too, moving with that slow, careful elegance it always had, like it felt the heaviness in the air. Finally, she spoke. "He took the plea deal," she said quietly. 2 years probation, restitution, fines, the works. I nodded. I already knew. She exhaled shakily. "He's not doing well." I didn't gloat. I didn't smirk. I didn't even feel satisfied. I felt something heavier, something sadder. Because for all the chaos, for all the boundaries crossed and lies told, this was still my nephew, the boy I once watched build Lego towers on my living room rug. "I'm sorry," I said honestly. "I truly am." But he put himself in this position. She rubbed her hands together, staring at the table like it had answers. Then she said something that made every part of me freeze. "There's something you don't know." I waited. She hesitated. And then she dropped a truth that felt like a stone through a window. "Marcus has been hiding debt," she whispered. "A lot of it." My eyebrows lifted. She nodded slowly, shame creeping up her face. Credit cards, loans, missed payments. He kept telling me it was under control. But after the charges came through, after Vanessa left him, everything unraveled. He finally admitted he owed thousands. He was desperate for a way out. I leaned back in my chair, stunned but not shocked. Suddenly, all the pieces made a kind of ugly sense. The pushiness, the obsession, the entitlement, the insistence that I didn't understand my own best interests. It wasn't just greed. It was panic. He thought the cottage rental would fix everything, she said. He thought it would solve the debt, impress Vanessa, start a business he could brag about. She thinned her lips. He never told me how bad it was until it blew up. Until all of this. I ran a hand across my forehead. "Carol, why didn't he come to me? Or anyone? Why lie?" She shot me a look that was equal parts guilt and frustration. "Because he thought you'd bail him out," she said. "And when you didn't, he tried to take what he thought he deserved." There it was, the bitter truth. Marcus didn't just want the cottage. He felt entitled to it, like it was supposed to fall into his lap, because life wasn't going the way he planned. Carol's voice broke just a little. I enabled him. I let him think everything would always be fine, that someone would swoop in and fix it. I didn't raise him to be like this, but in a way I did. I reached across and touched her hand. "Carol, this didn't start with you. He made decisions. He hid things. He crossed lines." "I know," she whispered, tears threatening. "But I keep asking myself, when exactly did he stop respecting boundaries?" When did he start believing other people's things were his solutions? She took a trembling breath. That's why I'm here, Thomas. Not to fight, not to blame. I just needed to see the place, to understand what he was willing to destroy. She turned her head and looked out the window again. The water was calm. A slight breeze rippled the surface. It felt almost symbolic. He said you two were close once, she said. He said he always admired you, that you were the smart one in the family. My throat tightened a little at that. It didn't excuse anything, but it added weight. She finished her tea slowly, letting the warmth settle inside her. Then she said something I didn't expect. Can I visit again? Not now. Not soon. But someday. I nodded. Anytime. Just call first. She almost smiled. Almost. Then she stood, smoothing her coat like she was trying to press her emotions back into place. Before she left, she turned back around. He's hurting, Thomas. I'm not asking you to fix anything, and I'm not siding with him. I'm just telling you, because you're family, whether you want to be or not. Then she left, and the cottage grew quiet again. But it wasn't the peaceful kind. Not yet. That night, I lit a fire in the wood stove and sat with the warmth on my face, tried to process everything. The debt, the lies, the desperation, the ripple effect of choices, and the fallout they leave behind. But even though things were settling legally, something inside me felt unsettled, like a thread hadn't been tied off, like there was still one more corner of this story that hadn't been turned. And I was right, because a week later, just when I thought the worst was over, my security camera caught someone on the property. Not Marcus, not Carol, someone I didn't recognize. And when I saw what that stranger was holding, and who they said they were working for, I realized the story wasn't even close to finished. Marcus's mess had dragged someone else into my life. Someone I never expected. A week after Carol visited, the cottage finally felt like it was settling back into its natural rhythm. Quiet mornings, crackling wood stove, the smell of pine drifting in from the deck. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe without waiting for another shoe to drop. But peace is tricky. It doesn't always announce when it's coming, but it sure lets you know when it's leaving. One night, just past 11 p.m., my phone buzzed with motion alert from the driveway camera. I frowned. Nobody should have been out here this late. Not friends, not neighbors, and definitely not family. I opened the live feed. A man stood at the edge of my driveway. Tall, had pulled up, hands shoved in his pockets. Not moving, not pacing, just standing like he was waiting for someone to invite him in. My stomach tightened because I didn't recognize him. And strangers don't just show up on secluded waterfront properties at night for friendly reasons. He stepped closer to the camera, and that's when I noticed something glint in his hand. A folder, the thick, formal kind you get from offices, not the kind people casually carry around. I didn't go outside, didn't yell, didn't confront him. I just spoke through the intercom on the security app. State your business and step back from my property. He looked straight at the camera and nodded like he wasn't surprised I was watching. Mr. Cartwright, he said. His voice was steady, clipped, rehearsed. I'm here on behalf of someone who recently worked with your nephew. My blood pressure hit the roof instantly. No way this was good. No way this was, let's talk about Jesus, hour. I kept my tone calm. Stepped back to the edge of the driveway. Now. He obeyed, which told me two things. He wasn't here to fight, but he wasn't here for something harmless either. He held up the folder so the camera could see it. I'm here because your nephew owes money, he said. A significant amount. My jaw tightened. I'm aware he's in debt, but that's not my concern. It is now, the man said, still calm. Too calm. Your nephew listed your cottage as collateral for a personal loan. I literally felt my heart stop for half a second. Collateral? Collateral for what? I stepped away from the camera and took a breath. Explain. I demanded. The man didn't blink. Your nephew told a private lender he had partial ownership of property. He used it to secure a loan he defaulted on. I'm here to verify whether the property exists and whether he actually has access to it. I swear I had to grip the counter to steady myself. Marcus, my nephew, had told some off-the-books lender that he owned my house, not rented it, not managed it, owned it. He had listed my home, the place I worked 37 years to afford, as collateral in a private loan he had no business taking. I stepped back to the camera. "You're trespassing," I said firmly, "and you're dealing with a fraud victim, not a debtor." He didn't flinch. "Sir, I'm not here for conflict. I'm here because the lender needs to confirm whether the collateral is legitimate. If Marcus lied, he'll face consequences with them, not with you." Yeah, that sentence, that one right there, it wasn't threatening on the surface, but underneath it was loaded. Consequences. Private lenders don't do stern warnings. They do wake-up calls that come with hospital bills. I exhaled. "What do you want from me?" "Just to confirm that the property is not his, that he has no claim to it. Once we have that, we close the file." I thought for a moment. Then I went and grabbed my deed. I held it up in front of the camera. "This is MY property," I said. "My name, only mine. Marcus has no ownership, no claim, no involvement. He lied to you." The man nodded. "Thank you. That's all I needed." He tucked the folder under his arm, turned, and walked away down the driveway without another word. No threats, no demands, no problems. But the message was clear. Marcus hadn't just dipped his toes into stupidity. He had swan-dived headfirst into it. I locked the door, triple-checked it, and sat down by the fire, rubbing my temples. My anger didn't flare up like before. This time it felt tired, worn out, like a bruise you've poked too many times. The next morning, I called Morrison, my lawyer, and told him what happened. He wasn't shocked. "People drowning in debt make reckless decisions," he said. "You did the right thing by documenting everything." I also called Constable Shue. She made a note of the incident in the ongoing file, just in case. And then, for the first time in this entire nightmare, I let myself breathe, really breathe, because for once, it felt like every part of this mess was finally out in the open. Marcus had been exposed. The lies were untangled. The boundaries were carved in stone. Weeks passed, then months. Winter loosened its grip. The inlet thawed. Spring sunlight spilled over the water like warm paint. The cottage slowly became what was always meant to be. Not a battleground, not a negotiation table, not an Airbnb, but home. One quiet morning, while sipping coffee on the deck, I saw the heron again, taller than usual, feathers rustling in the breeze. He looked at me the way he always did, like he knew things I didn't. Carol visited again in early spring, not to fight, not to defend Marcus, just to sit on the deck, sip tea, and exist in a space where nobody needed to win an argument. She said Marcus was in counseling, trying to rebuild, trying to get his life together, without shortcuts. I wished him well, truly, but I also kept the security cameras. Because loving someone doesn't mean abandoning the lessons they taught you the hard way. When she left, she hugged me. A real hug, not the stiff kind we've been giving each other for years. "You deserve peace," she whispered. "I hope you finally get it." And standing there on that deck, with the water glittering and the heron hunting in the shallows, I finally believed her. This wasn't the peace I expected. It wasn't clean. It wasn't perfect. But it was mine, hard-earned, heavily defended, and deeply appreciated. I went back inside, grabbed my book, and sat by the window. For the first time in a long time, the world felt okay, maybe even good.